All right. So welcome everybody. Really excited to have you all here. I call you guys happiness troopers, partly because you have been with Raj, either through Coursera, edX, or maybe you've read his book. And really happy to help to instill those habits even further. So today is our week 2. We are going to talk about the sin number 2 and the habit number 2. So what is the sin number 2? As you all may already know, it is chasing superiority. Chasing superiority. And there are certain subtle points in this particular sin and habit. And I'm hoping that we can make those subtle points clear. And if you have any question, any comment, please type it. That really helps us to know um, where to lead the discussion. So chasing superiority. So think about our childhood. We all have this notion of being better than others or being better than someone else. That's something probably we are born with some of that, because evolutionary speaking, it makes sense that establishing your own superiority or own power by using your superiority helps us to maybe feel secure, belong to a community, being a valuable member of a community. But it's not just by nature. Think about in the childhood, like when you are in school, who are the kids that get more attention by the teachers? So these depends on what environment you are in. If it's an academic school, then the academically superior kids will get more attention. If you are in a sports camp, then the athletically superior kids will get more attention. Like my daughter, who used to do gymnastics in school, when she was in school, she used to always complain that the good gymnasts are the one that get the maximum attention from the coaches because they want to win awards. So we have our award system, which makes us wanting to be better than everybody else. We have different measures. Sometimes it may be, oh, I belong to a community that's better, or I belong to a religion, we have better values. Or it could be a skill that you have, which sometimes, I'm not talking about everybody, but a lot of times we are kind of getting these messages of how we want to be better than others. And let's face it, we do live in a competitive world. In order to get a good job or establish yourself in the community, you do need to have something, some skill or something that you do well enough. And so from the parental point of view, or from the teacher's point of view, or the society's point of view, maybe it it makes sense in some sense to instill these kinds of values. So the subtle point is that I do not want to deny the importance of being good at something. And that does give us a good feeling. Does it make us happier? So even the research studies show that when we do something well, when we feel like, oh, okay, I'm doing this better than others, then we feel happier. So yeah, so that does give us a feeling of this is good. Then what's the problem then? Why not chase superiority? Why not just always try to get better than others? So there is a problem in that. The corollary of feeling good when we are better than others is when we feel that we are not as good as others, or others are doing better, then we feel unhappier. Then we feel envy, we feel jealousy. And the problem with chasing superiorities is never enough. Not only that, if you want to be the best, in fact, that's even worse, because then it's not clear who is the best. And no matter what you do, there will be somebody else who may be considered best by some other group of people. So being best is a very elusive goal. And being superior than others is also a very elusive goal. We typically measure it by using tangible measures such as money, wealth, success, power. But then what happens is, no matter how much you have, it's never enough. It's called hedonistic treadmill. And also it is then hard to enjoy other people's success. Like we live in Facebook culture, Instagram, Facebook, whatever social media culture. And when you see others posting their pictures, what do you feel? You feel like, oh my God, my life is so boring. And especially in the pandemic, it's even harder. You may be experiencing social isolation when your friends are posting pictures of how they're using this time to learn how to make breads and how their breads are turning it out to be really tasty. And so that kind of stuff is not very conducive to our being happy. So that's the reason why we want to examine this idea of being superior. Is it possible to want to be good at something, to discover what is it that gives us sense of fulfillment, but at the same time not to motivate yourself because you want to be better at somebody, not to make that into our goal? So now I think I'm going to ask Raj this question. What is the antidote to chasing superiority, which is something we all do have in us to a certain degree, but if not chasing superiority and still wanting to be good at something, how do you get out of this and still be happy?
Thank you, Swati, and welcome everybody once again. So, as Swati mentioned, the second sin is quote unquote, right? Sin is chasing superiority, and as she also mentioned, we are no strangers to it, and it's partly because society wants us to be superior, and we hear that message from our parents, maybe mentors. That kid, when we were a kid, you might have got this message that kid reads, these big books. Why can't you also read big books? Or that kid is number one in the class. Why can't you be number one, and so on. Um, as Swati mentioned, there's a subtlety here, which is that while being better than other people does give us some rewards, we end up feeling happier. There are these famous Whitehall studies that I talk about in the book, where they show that people with the same circumstances, life circumstances, living in a government building, having the same government medical plan, etc. But the higher up you are, the happier you are, and the higher your chances of surviving for longer, higher your longevity, life expectancy, and so on. So being higher up in the hierarchy is actually a good thing for us. And that might automatically mean that, we should chase being higher up, higher than other people, so chasing superiority. But it turns out that in the act of chasing, we actually lower our happiness, partly because we live in a society and other people don't like us as much when we try to be numero uno, so to speak. Okay, so how do you kind of get around this problem, right? And that's what Swati is asking me, and that's what the second habit is about. So the idea here is, it's in a way kind of similar to what we discussed in the last session on how, while happiness is important, chasing happiness actually lowers our chances of being happy. Similarly, while being good at doing something, and one way to evaluate if you're good at doing something is by comparing yourself to how well you do it compared to other people. Now, while that is important, chasing that directly actually lowers the chances that we are actually going to achieve it. And it also is going to have this negative byproduct of making you unhappier. And so the second habit kind of escapes this problem, this trap. And the second habit is, there's different ways to phrase it, but one way to phrase it is finding what Sir Ken Robinson calls your element. Okay, your element is the set of activities, the set of things that lie at the intersection of what you're good at and what you enjoy doing. So think about it, right? What you're good at and what you enjoy doing. Um, Usually there's a the intersection between those two. If you're good at doing something, let's say playing cricket or math, you're probably also going to enjoy it. Okay, but there might also be things that you really enjoy doing, but you're not really good at it. Again, I mean, cricket or math, right? Just because other people around you encourage you to do that activity, or you see that your hero is a cricket player, you might want to do it, but you may not be very good at it. Okay, so you need to find things that are at that intersection between those two. And Sir Ken Robinson calls it your element, because you are in your element when you find yourself there, where you're good at it and you also enjoy doing it. So the idea is to identify things that are in your element, and then devote time, attention, resources to that activity. And if you do that, chances are very, very high, because you enjoy it, because you're good at it, you're going to be motivated to continue to do it. And so, here's where I want you to pay attention to the different motivations that drive your practice behaviors, right? I mean, the chances that you actually end up spending time doing that activity. On the one hand, you can compare yourself to other people and maybe feel proud if you're already good at it, or maybe feel insecure and jealous if you're bad at it compared to other people, and use that negativity as a motivation to become better at it. Or you can use the love for the activity, because you're good at the activity and you enjoy doing it, as the motivation to continue to do it. Okay, so it's very important to continue to do that activity in order to become good at it, but there are different motivations. And the positive motivation is much better, not just in terms of your happiness. It's obviously going to be better for your happiness, but also, it turns out, in terms of your chances of actually succeeding in the long run. Because a lot of the research shows that you need to spend, the rule of thumb is 10,000 hours, give or take a few hundred hours from it, but you need to spend a lot of time doing an activity for you to be good at it. So I'm going to mute everybody right now, and then unmute myself. Hang on just a minute. Okay. All right, I think you can still hear me. Okay, so that's the idea in a nutshell, and hopefully that was clear enough. And I'm going to put the ball back in Swati's court. I don't know if she wants to continue to discuss this, or
yeah, little bit, Raj. I think one interest. Okay, so one of the things, the ways in which we measure our own things is how much money we have compared to others, or if making money itself can be the goal. And of course, if you are struggling financially, and if your education you think is going to pull you out of that struggle, then yes, you will have making money as your goal. But outside of that, making money as the goal in doing whatever activity you do don't seem to pay off in terms of happiness. Like the interesting study of 12,000 college students, where they were followed for almost 20 years. And in the beginning of their career, they were asked their goals, and the students who said making money is my goal, they seem to be unhappier over the years, more likely to be unhappy. So to remember, materialism does not seem to give us the happiness. Yes, when we buy things and something we buy is, let's say in comparison, we buy a better car than our neighbors. Yeah, it will make us feel good for the time being, but that in itself is not what we will call a sense of well-being or fulfillment. And our happiness definition is more like long-term, more solid, stable sense of well-being. So given that, I had asked you to take the materialism scale, and some of you may have taken it. So something to ponder over. So what do we want to then pursue? Like you said, we want to find out what we like to do. The notion of flow, you mentioned, the element, the other way to think about it is the notion of flow, which is the activities that you enjoy doing, the activities that give you a sense of, when you do it, it gives you a sense of satisfaction. And there may be a little bit of challenge in it. There may be something that it doesn't mean every moment of the activity is pleasant and nice, because maybe you want to learn a language and there may be some efforts you have to put into it. Or maybe gardening, and somebody was saying that when I actually do gardening, my back hurts, but I know the results, and so she does it every year in spite of her back hurting. It may be cooking for some people, like putting food together, getting all the ingredients and then presenting the food, feeding other people. So there are a lot of these simple activities, or it could be something you do at work. There are times even at work, there is a project that you really, for whatever reason, because your abilities match the requirements of the project, sometimes you feel good about doing that project. So the question is, can we look for what is it that we enjoy doing? Where do we get our flow? Where do we get our juice? So I think in Japanese, it's called ikigai. So there is, in fact, a book called Ikigai for those who want to read it. Simple idea, whatever you are good at and whatever your values are, and then in like, what is it that it can give you, like you are able to do. Your abilities, what you're good at, and your values, the intersection of it. So I'm going to ask you all to get pen and paper, and let's think about what is it that gives you that sense of satisfaction. It could be a simple activity, but it is good that when there is a little bit of a challenge, I think it works better. We shouldn't be bored. Our brains are made in a way that we like some challenge, but not overwhelming, not extremely stressful, anxiety provoking. So please get a pen and paper and write down the activities, maybe one, maybe 10, that you like to do, you enjoy doing, and it gives you a sense of satisfaction. And it's something you like to get good at. It doesn't mean you have to be the best. It doesn't mean, like, if you're a scientist, you are not working because you want a Nobel Prize, but because you like to do those things. If you're an artist, then the goal is not to become better than Picasso, but the goal is because you like to do the painting. You like to learn something, or maybe you like to exercise, and that gives you that sense of satisfaction. If you want eye contact, I don't know if you're in the speaker view or in gallery view. So maybe you want to put us in speaker view, because someone is saying, Divyesh is saying that he loved it when there was eye contact with the speaker, and that kind of makes sense. And I'm assuming you're almost done with writing your flow activities. And I want to emphasize that it's so important to know what your flow activities are. And there are times when you would be actually spend some time doing them. There are sometimes obstacles in following the flow activities. But by writing it down, I'm hoping you become aware of it and make extra effort in fact, spending some time doing it. Is it possible to spend some time doing these activities? So now I would like to, in fact, make another point. The idea is that you are going to do the flow activities because you derive satisfaction from it. That is the idea. Can everybody see me on the screen, the ones who have the speaker view? Can you say yes or okay? Because I see only Raj, so. Anyway, all right, great, great. Wow, there are lots of yes. All right. So the one thing that I do want to say, where we get in trouble is when we see others doing well. That is the time when sometimes, a lot of times, we all have experienced envy and jealousy. And that, in fact, is a burning and not a very good feeling. And when you are motivated because of your desire to be superior than others, not only sometimes it will come out as maybe show off or bragging, and it will not create collaboration. It will not be a good team player type of a feeling. So what is the antidote to that? And this is a very important point. This is something we need to cultivate, and that is something called sympathetic joy. Sympathetic joy is the ability to experience genuine happiness when another person is successful or when they are happy about something. So we may say things like, oh, I'm happy for you, but do we really mean it? And it does require cultivation. And by cultivating this habit consciously, it is possible, in fact, to change the quality of our relationships. When you see someone else being happy, a lot of times we treat it almost like there is a limited amount of happiness in the world. And if the other person is happy, that means I'll never be happy. But that's not the case. Even if, let's say, they get an award that you wanted for yourself, the promotion they got that you wanted for yourself, yes, you will have this disappointment and all these kinds of feelings. But after you are done with that initial disappointment, is it possible to understand that I can still be happy for them because I can look at it as inspiration? If you have envy, that means you have the capability of, in fact, doing it for yourself or getting that same kind of happiness for yourself. That's the reason why you feel envious. I don't feel somebody who is getting awards in singing. I never feel envious of them because I know I have no capability of singing. But if I have a capability and I want to get better, then if somebody is better than me, then I may not feel as then that's the time when I feel envious. So I can be inspired, and I focus on the things that are my flow. I use those activities to get better at and get what I want in life. So these two things are mutually independent when somebody else is doing better. So think about it. Every time when you now, Facebook will train you in that. Every time you see someone else doing something more exciting or more whatever it is, see if you can feel happiness for them and then focus on your own activity that gives you a sense of fulfillment. Because this needs cultivation, now we are going to do a meditation on sympathetic joy. There is another subtle point here though. Before you experience sympathetic joy for somebody else, you want to make sure that your own bucket is full. So we have to know what we are good at. We have to know my bucket is getting full or full already. The sense of harmony and abundance, and having a sense of self-worth that, yes, I will focus on my things. That confidence that is necessary in order to feel genuine happiness for somebody else. So the way to experience self-worth is to know what you want to do. And so this is really what you are experiencing for others, the ability to experience the same kind of joy for yourself. That is also just as important as a foundational thing. So let me guide you through a meditation on sympathetic joy. So are you all ready? Just make yourself comfortable wherever you're sitting. And let's get into this meditation. It's a beautiful meditation. And you may want to close your eyes if you wish. And taking a few deep breaths. And experiencing the nourishment that comes through these breaths in the body. For the time being, everything else is outside the door. It is just you, your own body, your mind, and attention on the body and how the body is receiving the breath by experiencing the nourishment and the energy that comes from taking deep breaths. And if the attention starts to wander around, that's okay. That is the nature of the attention. Once we realize it, that the attention was wandering around, saying to ourselves, aha, that's my mindful moment. I know my attention was somewhere else. Bringing it back to whatever we were doing before the attention wandered around. So I'm going to invite you to think about the flow activities that you just wrote about. Pick one activity out of this, one activity that gives you satisfaction, joy, maybe a little challenging, but it does not make you feel bored. And allowing yourself to visualize this activity or thinking, feeling this activity as if you are doing it. I'm inviting you to try to experience the activity as you're sitting here, hopefully with closed eyes, and in front of your mind's eyes or in your mind, experiencing this activity and the joy that comes to you when you do this activity, the sense of satisfaction that can be present when we do this activity, allowing yourself to experience it in the moment. And then noticing how does it feel in the body when you are experiencing the joy and the satisfaction or whatever is coming to you through this activity. First of all, being aware of what you get when you do this activity, what kind of feelings you get when this activity. Is it possible to become aware of these feelings and saying the activity, the name of the feelings, labeling the feelings, if it is joy or sense of achievement or satisfaction, fulfillment, or maybe some amount of stress for some people. But when you are done with the activity, or even when you're doing it, what positive feelings are coming to you? If you can label these feelings, labeling as in name these feelings, put them in words. And as you put them in words, how does it feel like in the body to feel the joy, the satisfaction, or whatever is coming to you? How is it in the body when you feel the feelings? Looking in the body and to see if it is possible to feel it in the body. Maybe some warmth, comfort, tingling. If it is possible, some people may not feel anything in the body, some people may. And now allowing yourself to experience the joy or the gratitude for having these activities in your life. The focus, the attention is experiencing the gratitude and also the joy that you have, the happiness that you have these activities with you, that you are able to have these activities with you. I rejoice that I have these activities. I have the ability to do these activities and derive my own satisfaction from it. I rejoice having these activities. You can say it out in your mind. You may want to use other words, but I suggest that I rejoice that I have the pleasure of doing these activities. I rejoice in my own ability to do these activities. I'm happy that I have these activities in my life. This is not about comparison with anybody else. It is just simply the fact that we have these things that we do and we get a sense of satisfaction, fulfillment, or maybe simple enjoyment. And now I invite you to think about someone who you have felt envious of. Somebody's success or happiness or something they have in their life, you have felt envious of them. Just for this moment, thinking about them and the envy that you have felt. And knowing that envy is part of normal human life. So allow yourself to feel it if it is there. It is not abnormal or bad to feel envy because it is a common human experience. So to allow yourself to feel it. And now putting the envy aside for a moment and allowing yourself to think about the inspiration you can derive from this other person's happiness. That may I find ways to use my own skills, my own activities to experience this kind of happiness. May I get inspiration to practice my own skills or acquire something that you think will give you the happiness. May I explore, may I get inspiration to explore my own ways to get this kind of happiness. Replacing envy with inspiration. For some people, it may be clear what it means, or it may not be clear what it means. However, wishing for inspiration instead of envy, that is possible. And knowing that you have your flow activities to give you satisfaction, that is a foundational thing you already have. You already have your flow activities. And then the inspiration to either practice the flow activities or getting the skill required for getting the same kind of happiness you're envious of, replacing envy with awareness of your own abilities and inspiration. Being aware of your own life, your own ability to acquire happiness, enjoyment. And now sending sympathetic joy to this person you had envy about. Sending sympathetic joy. So sending a wish, yes, may you be happy in whatever you have. May you be happy. And I send you genuine happiness wish. And sending the same wish to yourself. May I experience genuine happiness. And I send you a wish for genuine happiness. May I be happy and may you be happy. I send you a sincere wish for happiness. I rejoice in your happiness. And sending that wish to yourself too. And see if it is possible to be genuine for the moment. Notice, is it possible for you or it's not so possible for you? Are you saying it just because you're asked to say it? The words, do they mean something? Just noticing at the moment. But saying it in your mind, I send you a sincere wish of happiness. I rejoice in your happiness. Saying it to this person and then checking if you are sincerely feeling that way or is there any hesitation. And then turning towards yourself once again and giving yourself the happiness wish. May I be happy. May I experience similar kind of happiness. Repeating these sentences in your mind. I rejoice in my own activities, ability to do my own activities. And I rejoice in this other person's fortune. May I be happy and may you be happy. May I sustain my happiness and may you sustain your happiness. May I be happy and may you be happy. May I sustain my happiness and may you sustain your happiness. I rejoice in my own abilities and I rejoice in your abilities. I rejoice in my own abilities and I rejoice in your abilities. And now taking a few deep breaths again. And experiencing the nourishment that's coming to us through our breath. A deep breath and see how the body feels energized if it does. Experiencing the happiness that can be there because of the nourishment, the energy that's coming to us through the breath. This moment, at this moment, this is the nourishment I'm receiving through my breath. So getting ready to leave this meditation, taking one deep breath. And now I'm going to ask you to think about if you were sincerely able to experience sympathetic joy, or was there any hesitation? And just know that these things sometimes require conscious cultivation. It may or may not feel natural, or some people may have, in fact, experienced a calmness. But just know that the increasing the ability to experience sympathetic joy gives us a sense of peace, collaboration, teamwork. And at this point, I'm going to ask Elena, do you have any comments on what we just did, or any questions that you would like to focus on?
Well, we can see the last one. Actually, I think it's interesting. How can we, that's from Anne Lone, how can we practice flow if it's unavailable due to the pandemic?
Yeah,
The
that's a good
activity is
question.
unavailable.
Right, right. So if your flow activity requires doing something where you do need other people, then yes, in the pandemic, it will be difficult to practice it, yes. But you know that it's there, it's available to you once the pandemic is over. So pandemic is right now, but hopefully soon we are going to be out of it. Yes. So is there anything else that you can replace it with? And that may require some amount of creative thinking. But yes, I do want to acknowledge the pandemic may make it hard for some people. But if it is an activity where you don't need other people to be physically present, then it is still possible to practice it.
Swati, can I ask you a question about the what we were just doing? And so we were imagining somebody who was successful or something that we could envy those people. And for example, if that's something like material, for example, somebody has a car and I want that car. And so I'm supposed to replace that with the feeling of joy that I get out of cooking, for example, if cooking is my flow activity.
Right.
So I kind of find it difficult to replace because I can still enjoy cooking and wish that car. Maybe if I am a dancer and I see somebody else dancing better than me, yes, that can be an inspiration for me. I can learn and say, yeah, I really love how she dances and I want to dance like her. But in this case, how do I deal with these material things that I can have envy for? And
that's a great question, Ellen. I'm glad you asked that question. So when no, that's true. It is not comparable, like my flow activity versus that car. So two things. First of all, when you are envious of somebody else, let's say buying a BMW and envious of that, what are you envious of? First of all, what do you want from that? You want just a comparison thing that they are better than me. Is that why you're feeling envious? And they are better than you by buying a BMW in what way? In other words, we want that feeling, not so much the car itself, but the feeling of doing something well, being good at something. I would think that when they buy a BMW, what you are in essence envious of or could get inspiration from is to make sure that whatever the feeling that you want, can you replace that feeling as opposed to the car? So if it is a BMW that they're buying, maybe what you really want to focus on is the BMW is giving them a sense of like, they were successful in their job, let's say. So they have this feeling of, so can you replace it by feeling of doing something really good, doing something really well? So that is one way of comparing feelings, one way of dealing with this disparity that you're talking about, like cooking versus a car, right? And the other thing is, it doesn't always mean that you're thinking about your own flow activity. When you are thinking about a BMW and you are envious of that, maybe what you want is a BMW. So how do you get that? That's another way of inspiring yourself. So the thing is, this comparison thing is a little bit tricky, right? Because on one hand, we are programmed to compare ourselves, but really, in some sense, it is deprogramming that. So the sympathetic joy is, in fact, the next step, Elena, is even more important, which is, can we be happy for the person who bought that BMW? Great. They are feeling happy. They are feeling a sense of, I get to drive this car every day or whatever. Can we be happy for that? And can we replace our envy, not just with inspiration directly, but by sympathetic joy? That gives us a sense of peace and calmness. And that's, in fact, more important. And some people may have experienced it already. Some people may not have, but yeah. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah. Thank you, Swati. There's a question from Hari. Are we identifying our flow activities by comparing ourselves with others?
No, in fact, that's also a good question. The flow activities, and I did say it is not about comparison. It is about what you like to do. In fact, it's moving you away from comparison. There may be a little bit of sense of comparison if you want to do it, if you want to do it and you feel good because you did it, like knitting, I knit a better sweater than my friend, okay, you may get that satisfaction, but that's not what's motivating you. That's not what's giving you the final sense of joy. So to move away from the comparison and to be able to focus on what gives you satisfaction in doing that activity. Flow is not about comparison. Flow is about what is it that you enjoy, what is it that you're good at, what is it that you find challenging. Raj, do you want to add anything to that?
So one thing that happened on my side is the internet connectivity got a little bad. So I switched off my video and then I came back and something odd going on with my computer. It suddenly started playing some YouTube videos, even though I didn't do that. So I missed out on some parts of this. Okay, I think the last question I think I did get that, which was from Hari about comparing oneself to other people and can that produce flow. So as Swati mentioned, flow is a more of a individual kind of private experience, if you will. And it's a feeling of complete absorption in the activity to such an extent that you forget the sense of time. You forget even the separation between yourself and the activity. And by the way, to Divyesh's point of looking at the camera, what I'm doing is, I think, instinctively looking at all of you, which is in the center of my screen, rather than up at my camera. And that might be the reason why it looks like I'm not looking at the camera. But I'll try and make a conscious effort, because for me, I find it more natural to look at all of you, rather than look at that camera. But I'll try. So therefore, I mean, by definition, flow means that you're not focusing on other people and how well they're doing. You're definitely not comparing yourself to how they're doing. You're definitely on your own trip, so to speak. Okay, so I'll stop there with that, and then maybe we'll go on to the next question.
I have a question about, we know that challenge is that usually flow is characterized by the presence of a challenge, some kind of a challenge. But what if, for example, what if we think about activities like eating, or maybe talking to a friend, or maybe making love? These activities, I don't think really they often have some challenge, but at the same time disappears, you lose this consciousness, you're like, I mean, there, you don't really notice how time flies and you are enjoying. And so can those activities also be called flow?
I think so. I would say yes, if it is something that, by the way, this idea of losing track of time, I have to say one thing about that. A lot of women have said this to me, that it may be gender based, because I mean, I don't want to do gender stereotyping, but a lot of people, they can't just lose themselves in that activity, like they forget time, because they have to keep track of several things at the same time. So yeah, losing time, yeah, it may happen, but I don't think that is like the requirement. But however, yeah, simple things where it's not like a challenge. I think it is in between boredom and anxiety. It's the state in between these two.
So I actually have a comment on that. I don't think those are flow activities, according to Csikszentmihalyi, at least, who's the guy who wrote the book on flow. For him, flow activities are those in which you lose track of time. And that is a very significant characteristic of flow. And he talks 5 other characteristics of flow. And those characteristics are usually experienced when you're in a situation in which you're challenged to the right amount, where the amount of ability you have. Elena, you dance, you said. So if you're in a dance competition, for example, and you're competing in a category that is appropriate for you, right? I mean, let's say it's an intermediate category, and it's challenging enough, but not so challenging that you feel anxious, as Swati mentioned. It's between anxiety and boredom, but not so unchallenging that you're bored, right? So these other kinds of activities in which also you experience this kind of loss of time, or you're completely absorbed by them, but this feature that your challenge is not there, Csikszentmihalyi would not consider those to be flow activities. Those are what might be called, in very colloquial terms, time pass activities. You're watching a movie and you get completely absorbed in it, or you're having a conversation, you're completely absorbed in it, and so on. And that is a separate category that also is pleasurable, is also pleasant. But the key difference between the two is that in flow activities, you're actually learning and growing. You're becoming better than you were before. Whereas in these kind of passive activities where you're not being challenged and yet you have some of the same features of flow, like passage of time, etc., or loss of passage of time, that you're not really growing and learning. Okay, so that's the key difference, and this is why I think flow is a very, very important determinant of mastery. You can spend a lot of time conversing with friends. Okay, you're not necessarily going to improve in any significant way. You can binge watch a bunch of Netflix movies and you can get completely lost in them, but you're not going to come out as a better person in terms of any skills at the end of it. What makes you progress towards mastery is this idea of being challenged to the right amount. Okay, so I think it's very important to distinguish between the two. In this context that we're talking about, where you're feeling jealous of another person because they're superior, right? The idea is to achieve that mastery. Okay, and by merely kind of doing an activity that is a time pass activity that is entertaining, absorbing, you're not going to achieve that mastery. So it's very, very important to replace that motivation to do an activity that you might get through jealousy or through insecurity by comparing yourself to other people. You need to replace it with somebody else, and that replacement is flow. Okay, and so it's very important that you challenge yourself in these activities in order to improve. So I just wanted to
yeah, no, Raj, I'm glad you made these points. It's true. Csikszentmihalyi's definition, yes, it does require the mastery, like you said. And that's a really great point. I'm thinking about also the activities where it gives you a sense of, as I said, enjoyment and satisfaction. So if it is binge watching Netflix, yes, it may not be the flow activity, but it doesn't also give you the sense of satisfaction. In fact, it may make you feel guilty because next day you wake up groggy and you're like, why did I binge watch? But on the other hand, talking to a person and connecting with that person, in fact, may be where you get your juice. And that, in fact, is an important activity that may have its own challenges for you in terms of how you maintain your relationships. So it may give you a sense of satisfaction that is more basic, foundational. So if it is that kind of activity available to you, to be aware of that, I have that ability. And that is where that's what I mean by filling up, making sure, knowing that my bucket is full. It needs awareness, I have these activities. Because a lot of times we are too busy comparing or thinking about what we don't have compared to other people. And that's where we get into problems. And can I make one other point at this time, that in some sense, we all want to be special. And we all want to be, and that also is about comparison. But I just want to say that wanting to be special, in fact, makes it burdensome. If you take away this wish that I have to be special away, in fact, you kind of join the common humanity. And it is a freeing experience. It allows you to try a lot of different activities, you can take more chances because you're not always married to this idea of being special. And I'll give you an example of this. David Burns, who is the guru of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. I was listening to his interview. He was talking about, he had a group of therapists who used to come to him for training purposes. And one woman, she was very beautiful, always put together and always held herself like, really well. And he thought, wow, I mean, he was a little bit intimidated by her. But then one day she stayed back and she was crying. And she stayed back after everybody left. And she was talking to Dr. Burns, saying that she said that I feel extremely lonely. She said, I live on my own. And she said, I don't have a romantic partner. I find it really hard to connect with anybody because I feel maybe I have too many expectations. Maybe they get intimidated by me. I'm not sure, but I'm very, very lonely. And so suddenly David Burns said to her, realize that although he was somewhat intimidated by her, the idea that she was able to talk about her vulnerability was what made her human. And that's the way they connected with each other. And then he told her how she can make use of this feeling of loneliness in having compassion for others, or having a better understanding of other people who may be going through these things. So in fact, if you take away the idea of being special away and comparing or trying to make yourself look special to others, to the rest of the world, it in fact makes you more compassionate and more human. And that is also one of the related points that some of you may be able to relate to. Just think about it.
Okay. We had a question also from Tom. I think many of you already saw it. I think it's interesting about doing an activity for pure enjoyment. So I find it difficult to enjoy the activity for its inherent enjoyment. The example is I enjoy playing the guitar, but since I'm not performing, I often feel it's a pointless waste of time, even though I enjoy it.
Yeah, it's kind of very interesting and a very insightful point, I feel, that Tom has raised. And I too have experienced that kind of a thing. For example, this might be a drier example, but when I'm preparing for a presentation, right, and I do a dry run, it's not as enjoyable as it is when there's actually an audience in front of me. Okay, something about an audience gives you a little bit of I don't know, kick, higher level of enjoyment. And I think, at least in my case, and Tom, I'd like to hear what you think is happening in your case. In my case, a lot of it has to do with um, this source of enjoyment that assumes a bigger magnitude than the inherent enjoyment from the activity itself. And that source is um, kind of, getting praise, appreciation, a kind of pat on the back from the people listening to it. And I've kind of become somewhat addicted to that source, and over time nurtured it and built it up to such an extent that it's crowding out the other sources. And so now, doing something by myself, playing the guitar by myself, unless I have an audience, doesn't seem to bring me the anywhere near the same level of satisfaction. Okay. Now there are occasions in which, and by the way, I too play the guitar a little bit. It's a mere hobby. I'm an amateur, but um, there is a way in which you start to enjoy that activity of playing the guitar or singing with it, where there is nobody else present, when you're able to connect with the emotions of the song directly. Okay, and it could be a sad song too, and you actually have tears in your eyes as you're singing it, but ability to kind of connect with the emotions of the song and what the song means. You don't need an audience at all for that, to tap into that source of enjoyment. And the idea is to kind of nurture that too, rather than becoming overly dependent on public appreciation, so to speak. And I think, as Swati mentioned some time back, a lot of these things require a little bit of practice, and they're like muscles, and you got to work them out. But if you do work on them, then they build up, and then you start to kind of see the potency of that. And I don't know, I just wanted to offer that as something that I've experienced, and I wonder what other people think about it.
And we know that today many people talk about being present, right? Learning how to be present here and now. So is flow actually characterized by being present? Because I know it's characterized by distorted perception of time. So can we say that we are present when we are in flow?
So I'll say something about it, and then I'd be curious to hear what Swati and Elena, for that matter, you. And by the way, I'd love for other people to also contribute if you have any thoughts on this, and you can do that in the comment section in YouTube, or if you feel like you want to share it right now, you can raise your hand and I can unmute you. So this is a very interesting question again. Okay, so in flow moments, actually, if you think about it, they're kind of meditative. Some of the things that happen when you are deeply engrossed in a meditative state, such as time slowing down, being completely absorbed and focused on whatever is going on is happening in flow. But that state of meditativeness and absorption is top down in the sense that you're in a situation in which you're being challenged, and the challenge is pulling you into that state of absorption, complete absorption. Okay. Now, you might have a situation in which you have zero challenges. Right now, let's say that we sit down to meditate, and we did meditate some time back, and many of you, I saw the comments, felt that it was, it was really great, right? And presumably you also experience this slowing down of time and a complete absorption and a focus on whatever Swati was saying and the ability to visualize the things that she was asking us to visualize and so on. But this is not top down in the sense that this is not a challenge being presented to us that is pulling us into that meditative state. Rather, we are sinking down to the level of a lack of challenge and paying attention to all these subtleties that are going on in the environment, more focused on or maybe our breath, the sensations caused by the act of breathing, by the tonal changes in Swati's voice. Now we are being aware in a very open way. It's what's in the meditative practice called open awareness. There's open awareness that's going on in some of those mindfulness sessions. Whereas in a flow state, you have a focused awareness. It's very focused on a particular goal that you're trying to achieve that is pulling you into that meditative state. And so just as there's a difference between time pass activities that are absorbing and flow activities, I think there's a difference between flow activities and mindful kind of sessions or meditative sessions. And I think it's I find it very fascinating and useful to recognize the conceptual differences between these things. Okay. And these conceptual differences are, of course, tapping into the experiential differences. And once you understand that these are separate categories, then you start to understand that, there is separate values in each. The value of a flow activity often is that it is guiding you towards mastery. Of course, it's enjoyable in the moment too, but there is the added value of, because you're being challenged to exactly the right amount, you're growing and learning and you're progressing towards mastery. The value of time pass activities is that they're just pleasurable. That's what we discussed in session 1. Identify a set of activities that reliably and consistently give you a sense of pleasure or positivity and go after them, right? That's what we discussed in session 1. And the value of meditative states is that you can start to enjoy any and every moment. Even if it's a stressful moment, you can actually start to enjoy it by sinking down to the level of whatever the reality is at that point in time. Even if you're not being challenged, just by being completely openly aware of whatever is going on, it becomes very interesting. So you avoid being bored for the rest of your life by being a good mindfulness practicer. And each of these has its own set of benefits.
Sorry to interrupt you. Such a big classification. What about writing another book about all these different categories of activities?
Yeah, it's just wonderful, right? Life, if you kind of, there is a quote by this guy called Durkheim who said that in academics, especially, the endeavor is to know more and more about less and less. That is, get deeper and deeper into narrower and narrower classification of things until you end up with knowing everything about nothing, So it's kind of like a very interesting quote.
So Raj, I actually would like to address something that I read on the screen. It's not a question, it's a comment, but I think it is something I find needs to be made clear. So someone, CP, is saying folks like Professor Raj and Dr. Swati are so well placed in life, it seems like they have no reason to be unhappy. And I do want to say that that's one way we, in fact, I don't know, CP, if this is what you mean or anything like that, but I'm just going to take from this and explain certain things, that we tend to do this when we see another person's, like situation or happiness. Sometimes we assume that, wow, like everything seems to be great for them. Everything is working so well, but not for me. And that's what in cognitive work would be called is a little bit of a distortion, because like Buddha said, everybody, like one fact about life is we all have difficulties, we all have our own challenges. He calls it suffering. But the idea of happiness trooper or being happiness seeker is life gives us whatever. So I can't talk about Raj, but I know my own challenges in my own life. It depends on, and I have also learned over the years, it depends on how I process it. So whatever is given to you in life, how do you take it, and what do you make of it? Like last time I said lemon and lemonade. So that really is true. And that's what I've learned. Like, for example, I have grown up kids now, and I have gone through a lot of like trying to protect them, fix things for them, trying to get rid of, like whatever I thought would make life difficult for them. Now I have realized that I have to keep out of it. I have to let them struggle and let them figure out on their own. That makes my life so much better, because I'm not as involved or attached to it anymore. So somebody, let's say, who is in wheelchair and who's not able to walk, and they look at the rest of the world, I understand it is extremely difficult to say that, okay, they are able to walk, I'm not able to walk, it's okay. It will be difficult. It will be difficult. But at the same time, to be able to, maybe they have reading as their activity that they enjoy, or meditation. So to be able to focus on that, and maybe helping others who have disabilities, or having a support group of people who have disabilities. So know that everybody has something in their life. Everybody has something. Even the people who seem happy on Facebook. Like they say, they don't show people going to the bathroom on TV serials, which has changed, by the way. Now they have started showing those things also.
We are at 11:15, Swati, and I know that there are lots of questions. Maybe we can take another 2 or 3 minutes, just because there's a lot of interest. Of course, people who have other things going on, feel free to leave. And Elena, I know that you had said that you wanted to, there was things you had lined up after this, right?
Yeah, I can stay for like 5 minutes more. I have meeting.
Let's do that, and then we can end. Yeah.
Do you have any question, Elena, that you have, or any comment?
I saw this comment from simply a Zoom user about, so example, when you work on non-flow activity, you can pinpoint what emotion is involved, build on that. Well, what I thought about when I read this is I thought that maybe you can not even know that you enjoy doing something, because sometimes it's so hard to do something to start. Like, for example, if it's writing an essay and you don't like it, you procrastinate, you think it's not going to be enjoyable, but then once you start, somehow you may discover that you enjoy it, and you enter in the flow state, and then you can't stop because you have so many ideas. And I think it's interesting how we can sometimes just by starting something, discovering new flow activities, right?
Yeah, inertia, right. But I think it is so important to pay attention to the positive experience that we get in the end. You are right. A lot of times we procrastinate. We don't think it's going to be that great, whatever. And then once we start it, we do enjoy it, and we do get some challenge and overcoming that and the satisfaction. But it's really important to know that aspect of it. That's what I was saying. Be aware of the positive things, that positive feeling that you are getting from these activities. It needs sometimes turning your attention towards it and realizing that's what I'm getting from it. It's so important. We have negativity bias. That's why we have inertia a lot of times. But that's a really good point, Elena.
And there's one more question. So we turn to classes, seminars, and therapists to help us with happiness and other issues. And who do you turn to when you're not feeling happy? I think Raj's course.
Isn't the answer to the question in the question itself? I mean, he's...
Yeah. It seems like, I think maybe the person said that when you're not feeling happy, maybe you don't have desire probably to learn happiness. Maybe you're feeling so bad that you don't know what to do.
Yeah,
Maybe
there's
that's
actually some work on that, and I have a paper on it. It's not published yet, but this idea that sad states, especially as opposed to say angry states are also negative, but there's an energy in the angry states. Whereas in sad states, depression, etc., you're so out of energy that it translates into questioning the efficacy of anything that can lift you up. So you often see sad people kind of moping and staying indoors, and everybody else can look at them and say, hey, what is going to really help you out is go out, mingle with people, talk to people, and you're going to feel good for sure. But they themselves can't bring themselves to do it. And what we're discovering is in our studies is that it's mainly because they make the assessment that nothing is going to improve my mood. Okay.
Right.
And so it's almost like you're trying to lift yourself up with your shoe straps. You can't do it. And you have to somehow get to that point where you somehow convince yourself to do those set of activities, and you'll discover that they in fact help you out. Okay. And so, if that is the question, how can I know, I'm feeling so down, and there are these courses and therapists and all these options available, and yet I can't bring myself to do it. The answer is somehow get yourself to do it. Okay. So somehow act, just do it, like Nike says, and you'll discover that it actually has a positive effect. And I've used that so many times myself. And to Swati's point, I mean, like you could look at me, or for that matter, Elena, or, somebody who's successful, Elon Musk, right? Of course, everything is going well for them. You can imagine that, but everybody's got their own internal demons. Everybody's got their own problems. And everybody, I mean, me included, even though I talk and think about happiness a lot, has challenges and moments when things are not great. And this session, for example, right? And it might almost seem like, okay, Raj kind of talks about all of this in the book, and therefore he must be a master of it. And this is not going to really be useful for him. It's only for the sake of the participants that I'm doing it. No, I mean, I need reminders and reinforcements as well. And it's the journey is to infinity, and so anyway, I mean, I kind of like combine two questions into one answer. So just do it.
And what you just said, for me personally, that's the answer. That's for me something that helps me, for example, not to think that somebody maybe has something better than me, or not to feel jealous. Because if I realize, I keep in mind this realization that everybody has their own problems that we might not know about. So that helps not to feel jealous, because what you see on, on Facebook, or what you see on the outside, that beautiful car, or whatever it is, you don't even know what could be happening in people's lives. So I think that that's something that can help people not to feel jealous or envious, right?
Yeah,
yes, that's true.
I mean, sorry, I just one thought that occurred to me. In fact, a lot of times when people put out those kinds of posts, it's what's called compensatory consumption. It's because something is going badly in their lives is when they feel particularly motivated to do it, so that they can get some compensatory positive vibes for the negativity that they're feeling. So
makes sense.
Yeah. So the people who are unhappy, like you said, Raj, that happens when you actually really need it. That is not the time when you have the energy to follow all these things up. I just want to say that all these things that we are talking about, it does require practice and reminders, like you said. And remember that it's not that you try something, oh, it's not going to work, and push it away. The ones who are not able to do it because of having low energy, um, I would say, my compassion goes out to them. I know it is hard when you have low level depression or real depression. It makes it particularly hard. So total compassion, total patience, be patient with yourself, be compassionate with yourself, and get yourself to follow some regime as much as you can. Don't give it up. Try it for 10 years, but keep trying, and then you will get it. So that's the message. Try it for 10 years, anything new that you want to try. And it does make a difference.
All right. I think we should say our goodbyes now. It's good 11:25, actually, 10 minutes over time. Thank you very much, everybody. Take care, and love to all of you. Have a great next weekend.
Thank you, Elena. Thank you, Raj. Thank you, everybody, for joining in and sending you wishes for happiness, all of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this.